The autumn wind rattled the maple trees outside St. Matthew's Parish in a small town in Ohio. It was a Sunday morning like so many others. But something about the day felt unsettled. The church bells rang. Not as a gentle invitation, but as if they were calling people to prepare for something far greater than routine worship. Inside the church, the pews filled quickly. Families shuffled in. Children whispering. Grandparents clutching rosaries. And young adults trying to shake off the haze of late nights. The air carried a mix of candle wax, polished wood, and faint incense lingering from the earlier Mass. Among the parishioners sat Ellen Carter, a woman in her early 40s with calm hazel eyes that often saw more than they revealed. Ellen had lived in the town all her life. She was the kind of woman who blended in, never seeking attention. Yet her presence brought a steadiness others relied on. As a single mother raising 2 teenagers, she had learned to hold herself together in storms that had broken many others. That morning, Ellen felt a weight in her chest. She prayed quietly. Lord, let me be still. Help me stay at peace, even when the world tries to shake me. Her prayer was interrupted by the heavy doors of the church slamming shut. Heads turned. A man had entered. Mark Benson, a former town councilman, disgraced months earlier for misusing public funds. He had been publicly shamed, mocked in newspapers, and abandoned by former friends. Mark walked with his shoulders stiff, jaw clenched. His eyes scanned the congregation like a man searching for an enemy. When his gaze landed on Ellen, he stopped. Their history went back years too far and too tangled for the town to forget. Some whispered. Others pretended not to see. But everyone noticed. After Mass, people spilled onto the church steps, shaking Father Daniel's hand, greeting neighbors, and making plans for Sunday lunches. Ellen walked out slowly, her children at her side. Mark stood near the gate, waiting. His face was red. Not from the cold, but from something deeper: resentment. Maybe rage. Ellen, he said loudly, loud enough for others to hear. You always act so holy in there, praying your perfect prayers. But you think you're better than the rest of us. The crowd went quiet. Ellen froze, then steadied herself. Mark, this isn't the place, she said softly. But Mark wasn't finished. Don't play the saint. You spread lies about me. You told people I couldn't be trusted. That's why I lost everything. Her son, Jason, tensed beside her. Mom, let's go, he whispered. Ellen's heart pounded, but she remembered her morning prayer. She looked at Mark not with anger, but with an unsettling calm. I didn't take anything from you, Mark, she replied. The truth speaks for itself. Some people nodded, murmuring their agreement. Others shook their heads, uncomfortable with the confrontation. Mark sneered. Easy for you to say. You get to stand there looking holy while I'm treated like dirt. Ellen placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and began to walk away. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself. She simply said, Peace be with you, Mark. Her restraint stunned the crowd. Some admired her composure. Others whispered that she was too passive. Mark, however, burned with humiliation. That afternoon, Ellen sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Her hands trembled slightly. She replayed the scene in her head. Every word, every look. She hated public conflict, and though she had held her ground, The encounter had unsettled her. Her phone buzzed. It was Rachel, a longtime friend and fellow parishioner. "Ellen, I don't know how you stayed so calm," Rachel said. "If he'd spoken to me like that, I'd have given him a piece of my mind." Ellen sighed. "I wanted to. Believe me. But what good would that do? If I fought back, everyone would just remember the shouting. No one would see the truth." Rachel hesitated. "Maybe. But sometimes silence looks like weakness. Or strength." Ellen answered quietly. When the call ended, Ellen closed her eyes. She remembered the words Father Daniel had preached just a week ago when Christ stood before his accusers. He did not retaliate. His silence was not weakness, but authority rooted in truth. Across town, Mark sat alone in his dim living room. Empty beer cans scattered on the table. The humiliation burned in him like acid. He had hoped to confront Ellen, to expose her, to make her crack. Instead, she had left him looking like a bitter man shouting into the wind. "Peace be with you," he muttered mockingly, slamming a can against the table. "She thinks she's so righteous." Memories tormented him. Ellen's testimony at the council hearing. Her calm insistence that town funds had been mishandled. She hadn't Lita knew that. But he blamed her anyway. Without her voice, maybe the whole scandal would have been buried. Now, he wanted revenge not in some criminal way, but in the way small towns exact their punishment, with gossip, with exclusion, with character assassination. He picked up his phone and began typing a post for social media. By Monday morning, rumors had ignited like dry grass. At the local diner, people whispered about the scene on the church steps. Some claimed Ellen had humiliated Mark on purpose. Others praised her for refusing to escalate. At school, Jason overheard classmates saying his mom acted like she was too good for everyone. His fists clenched, but he remembered her example. He bit his tongue. By Tuesday, a Facebook post from Mark had gone viral within the town. It accused Ellen of being a wolf in sheep's clothing, someone who destroyed reputations while hiding behind rosary beads. Ellen saw it late that night. Her stomach turned. She knew the damage words could do. In a town this small, lies didn't just travel, they stuck. She knelt by her bed. "Lord, help me hold steady. Help me not repay evil with evil." At Bible study on Wednesday, the tension spilled into the open. A few people avoided Ellen's table. One woman whispered, "Maybe Mark has a point. Ellen always looks so calm. But who knows what she says behind closed doors?" Rachel squeezed Ellen's hand. "Don't listen to them. Truth will come out." Father Daniel, sensing the division, addressed the group. "Friends, remember this. Division is the enemy's oldest tool. Do not let gossip or anger tear apart what Christ died to unite. Stand firm in truth, but do so with peace." Still, doubt hung in the air. The town was watching Ellen closely. Some admired her silence. Others wondered if silence meant guilt. By Friday, Mark had grown bolder. He began showing up wherever Ellen went, at the grocery store, the gas station, even outside the school. He never touched her, never threatened directly. But his presence was heavy with accusation. One evening, as Ellen walked to her car after choir practice, Mark appeared from the shadows of the parking lot. "You think you've beaten me," he said, voice low but seething. "But I'm not finished. People are starting to see the real you." Ellen's heart pounded. but she steadied her breath. She looked him in the eye and said, "The truth doesn't need defending, Mark. It stands on its own." For a moment, his face contorted with rage. Then he smirked. "We'll see how long your truth lasts when no one believes you." He walked away, leaving her in the dark. Ellen sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel. She whispered a prayer. But she knew this storm was only beginning. The following Monday evening, Ellen attended a parent-teacher conference at the high school. She wore her usual modest dress and cardigan, carrying herself with the same quiet dignity she had always shown. But as she entered the gymnasium where tables had been set up, conversation slowed. Eyes flicked toward her, then quickly away. Jason's English teacher greeted her warmly, but Ellen could feel the shift in the air. Parents who once smiled now seemed cautious, as if acknowledging her might taint their own reputations. During the meeting, she overheard two mothers whispering near the refreshment table. "It's always the ones who act holier than thou." One said, "I heard she orchestrated the whole thing to get Mark out of office." The other replied. Ellen pretended not to hear, but their words cut deep. She thought of Christ being judged by the crowd, condemned not because he was guilty, but because the mob believed the loudest voices. When the conference ended, Jason walked beside her. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling with teenage frustration. "Why don't you just tell people the truth? Tell them what really happened with Mark." She stopped in the hallway and looked at him. "The truth doesn't always need my defense, Jason. If I fight back with the same anger, I'll just add fuel to his fire." Jason shook his head. "But silence feels like losing." Ellen rested her hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes silence is the only thing that can outlast lies." Meanwhile, Mark's bitterness deepened. At a local bar on Tuesday night, he ranted to a group of old acquaintances. "She ruined me," he said, slamming his glass on the counter. "I had a career, respect. Now I'm a joke. And she walks around like she's St. Ellen of Ohio." One man laughed uncomfortably. "Maybe you should just let it go, Mark." "Let it go?" Mark's voice rose. "She destroyed me, and the church just lets her sing in the choir like nothing happened. They pity her. But I'll show them who she really is." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos, muttering about ways to discredit her. His obsession was no longer just about his ruined career, it was about vengeance, about proving he wasn't the only guilty one. By midweek, Father Daniel requested to meet Ellen privately. They sat in his office, bookshelves lined with theology texts and family photos from parish events. "Ellen," he began gently, "I can see this situation is taking a toll on you and your children. I want you to know the church stands with you." Ellen clasped her hands. "I appreciate that, Father. But I feel like no matter what I do, the whispers keep spreading. I can't stop them." Christ himself could not stop the whispers, Father Daniel said. When he was accused, he remained silent because the truth was already written on the Father's heart. But remember, silence does not mean inaction. Sometimes it means choosing a higher road. Tears welled in her eyes. "But my children are suffering. Jason is angry. Emily cries at night because kids at school say terrible things. How do I protect them?" The priest leaned forward. "You can't shield them from every harsh word, but you can show them how to face injustice without letting it poison their souls. That lesson will last longer than any rumor." Ellen nodded slowly. His words steadied her, though the burden remained. On Thursday afternoon, Ellen stopped at the grocery store. She needed bread, milk, and a few vegetables. But even mundane errands had become tense. As she reached for a loaf of bread, she heard Mark's voice from the next aisle. There she is, the saint of St. Matthew's. She turned. He stood at the end of the aisle, arms crossed, smirk curling at his lips. "Mark," she said calmly, "I don't want trouble. You already brought it." He snapped. "But I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are." Other shoppers glanced nervously. Ellen felt heat rising in her chest, but she drew a deep breath. The truth will stand. Mark. It always does. His face twisted. "We'll see about that." He turned abruptly, knocking over a display of canned goods. The crash echoed through the store, startling children and drawing stares. Mark stormed out, leaving chaos behind him. Ellen crouched to help the clerk restock the cans. She whispered, "Lord, give me patience. Give me peace." That weekend, the town seemed split into camps. Some believed Ellen represented the kind of faith everyone should aspire to calm. Steadfast, unwilling to engage in hate. Others believed her silence was arrogance, that she was hiding something behind her saintly image. At the diner, conversations grew heated. "I've known Ellen my whole life," one man said. "She's never been anything but honest." "Honest?" Another countered. "Then why doesn't she defend herself? Innocent people speak up." The debate reached the parish council, where even church leaders worried about how the division might harm the congregation. Some urged Father Daniel to publicly clear Ellen's name. Others feared it would only inflame the situation. Through it all, Ellen continued her routine work, caring for her children, volunteering at church. But each day required greater strength to endure the whispers, the stares, the quiet judgments. Late one night, unable to sleep, Ellen sat by her window. The town was quiet, only the distant hum of trucks on the highway. She opened her Bible. Flipping to Isaiah, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." She closed her eyes. "Lord, I trust you. But why does it feel like I'm standing alone against a tide I can't stop?" Her phone buzzed with a new notification. Mark had posted again, this time hinting at dark secrets in Ellen's past. He offered no proof, just innuendo. But it was enough to spark another round of speculation online. Ellen set the phone down, tears spilling onto her hands. How much more? Lord, how much longer must I endure this? At that moment, Emily padded into the room, rubbing her eyes. "Mom, I had a nightmare. Can I sleep with you?" Ellen pulled her daughter close. As Emily drifted back to sleep in her arms, Ellen realized she could not control the storm, but she could be the safe harbor her children needed. Friday night, Ellen attended a youth group event at the parish, volunteering as a chaperone. The evening went smoothly: pizza, games, music. For a few hours, she almost forgot the tension. But as she walked to her car afterward, she found a note tucked under her windshield wiper. The handwriting was messy, the ink smudged, but the words were clear. "Your silence won't save you. Everyone will know." Her stomach dropped. She scanned the dark parking lot. but no one was there. For the first time, fear pierced through her calm. This wasn't just gossip, Anna Maria, it was a threat. She clutched the note, heart racing. Was Mark behind it? Or had someone else taken his bitterness into their own hands? Ellen started the car, her breath shallow. She whispered, "Lord, protect us. This storm is about to break." Ellen barely slept after finding the note on her windshield. Every creak of the house, every passing car outside, made her flinch. She locked the doors twice, checked the windows 3 times. Her children sensed her unease, though she tried to mask it. The next morning, she showed the note to Rachel. Her friend's eyes widened. "This is getting dangerous," Rachel said firmly. "You can't just keep ignoring this. Ellen, you need to call the police." "I don't have proof it was Mark," Ellen replied. "And if I accuse him without evidence, it'll only make things worse." Rachel slammed her hand on the table. "So you'll wait until he actually hurts you?" Ellen swallowed hard. "I'll wait until I have no choice." By Sunday, Ellen's children begged her to take action. Jason, his jaw clenched with frustration, said, "Mom, you always tell me to stand up for what's right. Isn't reporting him standing up?" Her heart broke at his words. That afternoon, she walked into the local police station. The desk officer, Sergeant Miller, listened carefully as she explained the situation, the harassment, the online posts, the threatening note. Miller scribbled notes and sighed. "We'll keep an eye on Benson, but unless he directly threatens you in person, our hands are tied." "So I just wait?" Ellen asked. "Document everything," Miller advised. "And if you feel unsafe, call 911 immediately." Ellen nodded, though her gut told her that waiting would only allow the storm to gather force. That evening at Mass, Father Daniel preached about Christ's words in Matthew, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Ellen shifted uncomfortably in the pew. She had prayed for Mark before, but after the note, her prayers had become mechanical, void of compassion. She bowed her head and whispered, "Lord, how do I love someone who is trying to destroy me?" As if sensing her turmoil, Father Daniel added, "Loving your enemies does not mean allowing them to walk all over you. It means refusing to let hatred take root in your own heart." Ellen exhaled slowly. She could not control Mark's actions, but she could control whether she allowed bitterness to poison her soul. Across town, Mark sat in his cluttered living room, scrolling through comments on his latest Facebook rant. Some people encouraged him, fueling his bitterness. Others mocked him, which only made his anger boil hotter. He replayed the confrontation outside the grocery store in his mind. Ellen's calm voice echoed like a taunt, "The truth will stand." "Mark. It always does." He punched the arm of his couch. "No, Ellen. Not this time." He poured another drink, muttering to himself. The line between exposing her and destroying her blurred in his mind. What had begun as anger now twisted into obsession. On Wednesday afternoon, Ellen went to the farmer's market with Emily. The sun was bright. Music from a local guitarist floated through the air, and the smell of fresh bread and apples filled the square. For a moment, it felt like peace, until Mark appeared. He strode toward her, voice booming loud enough for everyone to hear. "Here she is, the church's little saint. Tell me, Ellen, do you enjoy ruining lives?" Emily clutched her mother's arm. Ellen steadied her breath. Mark, please. Not here. There are children. Children should know the truth. Mark barked. You're not the victim. You're the executioner. People gathered, whispering. Some pulled out their phones. Recording. Ellen's hands trembled. But she stood firm. Mark, I forgive you for your anger. But this has to stop. His face reddened, veins bulging at his neck. Don't you dare forgive me. You don't have that right. For a moment, it seemed he might strike her. But then he spat on the ground, turned, and stormed off, shoving past vendors and knocking over a basket of apples. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some rushed to Ellen's side. Others shook their heads, muttering, she should have fought back. Emily cried quietly, and Ellen wrapped her arms around her. Cameras had captured it all. And within hours the video spread across social media, dividing the town even further. By Thursday, the confrontation dominated conversations. At the diner, half the patrons condemned Mark's behavior. The other half claimed Ellen was manipulating the situation by playing victim in public. At school, Jason's fists finally flew when a classmate sneered. Your mom's not a saint, she's a fraud. He was suspended for 3 days. When Ellen picked him up, Jason's eyes blazed with anger. I'm sick of staying calm. Mom, everyone thinks you're weak. Maybe if you actually fought back, people would respect us. Ellen pulled the car over. Jason, listen to me. Respect that comes from fear isn't real. What I'm teaching you is harder. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout. Jason looked away, tears of rage brimming. I don't want to be strong like that. I want this to end. Her heart broke again. She prayed silently. Lord, show me how to hold my family together when everything around us is falling apart. Friday night, Ellen returned home from choir practice to find her mailbox open and papers scattered across the lawn. She gathered them quickly, heart racing. Inside the box was another note. This one more chilling than the first. Saints bleed too. Her hands shook as she clutched the paper. This was no longer just harassment, it was a direct threat. She called the police, who promised to investigate. But their tone carried doubt. Rachel rushed over when she heard. This is it. Ellen, you can't just endure anymore. You have to fight back. Ellen's eyes filled with tears. Fight how? Rachel? With lawsuits? With fists? That's not who I am. Rachel gripped her shoulders. Then what are you going to do? Wait until he really hurts you. Ellen looked down at the note in her hand. I'm going to pray. And then I'm going to stand. Not with hate. Not with fear. But with the truth. Sunday morning arrived gray and heavy. Clouds gathered over St. Matthew's Parish as families filed into the church. The tension was palpable. People whispered about the note, about the video, about whether Ellen would show up. She did. Ellen walked in with her children, her head high despite the storm swirling around her. Mark was there too, standing at the back, arms crossed, eyes burning. As Mass began, Father Daniel spoke firmly. Today we pray for unity. We pray for peace in our community. And we remember that violence, whether in words or actions, has no place among God's people. But as Ellen knelt in prayer, she felt Mark's gaze searing into her back. The storm had not yet passed. It was gathering, waiting to strike. And deep down, She knew the moment of reckoning was coming. Winter arrived in Ohio with heavy gray skies and the hush of falling snow. The town, still shaken from the confrontation in the parking lot, seemed quieter. Rumors no longer swirled like before. People had seen too much how close things had come to real tragedy. Ellen returned to her routines, working at the library, helping at the parish, making dinner with her children. Life wasn't perfect, some whispers lingered, but the sharp edge of hostility had dulled. The air felt lighter. One evening, Jason sat at the kitchen table, books spread out in front of him. He looked up and said, "Mom, I think I finally get it." Staying calm wasn't about letting Mark win. It was about not letting him drag you down to his level. Ellen smiled. "That's right. Anger only multiplies anger. But peace, that changes the story." Emily chimed in. "Like when Jesus didn't fight back even though he could have." Ellen's eyes softened. "Exactly, sweetheart." A month later, Ellen received an unexpected call. Mark had requested to see her. After prayer and hesitation, she agreed. At the county jail, she was led into a small visitation room. Mark entered, thinner, his face tired but clearer. He sat down across from her, avoiding her eyes at first. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. Ellen folded her hands on the table. "Why did you ask me here?" "Mark?" He swallowed hard. "Because I needed to tell you to your face I am sorry. I let my anger consume me until I couldn't see straight. I blamed you because it was easier than facing my own mistakes." For a long moment, Ellen said nothing. Then she leaned forward slightly. "I forgave you before I walked into this room." Mark blinked, surprised. "Why? After everything I did?" "Because holding on to hate would have destroyed me just as much as it destroyed you," she said. "I don't want that for either of us." Tears filled his eyes. He nodded, whispering, "Maybe God hasn't given up on me yet." "He hasn't," Ellen assured him. "He never does." News of Ellen's visit spread quietly through the parish. Some people shook their heads, saying she was too soft. Others admired her courage. But the conversation shifted. Instead of debating whether Ellen was guilty or arrogant, people began talking about forgiveness, about what it meant to live faith in action. At the next Bible study, Father Daniel asked, "What does it mean to love your enemies in a practical way?" One man raised his hand. "It means doing what Ellen did, showing up, even when it's uncomfortable." Another added, "It means believing people can change, even when they've hurt you." The group sat in thoughtful silence. For the first time in months, the air in the room felt less heavy, more hopeful. That spring, Ellen was invited to speak at a parish retreat. Nervous, she stood before the crowd, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't like attention," she began. "I never asked for this. But when storms came into my life, I had a choice, to fight with anger or to stand in peace. I won't pretend it was easy. There were nights I cried, nights I wanted to shout back, nights I almost gave in to fear. But I remembered Christ before his accuser, silent, steady, rooted in truth. And I realized my silence wasn't weakness. It was trust. Trust that God's truth would stand even if I didn't defend it. Tonight, I want to remind you, peace isn't passive. It's powerful. It disarms anger. It confuses hatred. And it protects our souls from becoming what we despise." The room was quiet, many wiping away tears. Ellen stepped down from the podium, her heart lighter than it had been in months. One warm afternoon in June, Ellen walked through the park with her children. She spotted a familiar figure on a benchmark, released early on probation, reading a worn Bible. For a moment, she hesitated. But then Emily tugged her sleeve. "Mom, let's say hi." They approached. Mark looked up, startled, then stood awkwardly. "Ellen, kids, I didn't expect." "It's all right," Ellen said gently. "How are you doing?" He glanced at the Bible in his hands. "One day at a time. I don't deserve another chance, but I'm trying to live like I've been given one." Jason studied him carefully. Then, to his mother's surprise, he extended his hand. Mark hesitated, then shook it. Ellen smiled faintly. "That's all any of us can live like every day is grace." They parted ways, but the moment left a deep impression on her children. They had seen not just words, but forgiveness in action. That summer, the town settled into a new rhythm. Ellen continued her quiet life, not as a victim or a hero, but as a woman who had walked through fire and come out with her faith intact. The memory of the storm lingered, but it had transformed into something more, a testimony that peace is stronger than violence, that truth does not need shouting, and that forgiveness can heal even the deepest divides. Ellen sat on her porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Jason strummed his guitar softly while Emily sketched in her notebook. The air was calm, the world at peace for now. She whispered a prayer of gratitude. "Lord, thank you for carrying us through. Let this peace remain, even when the next storm comes." This story is not just about Ellen or Mark. It is about every one of us who faces injustice, slander, or violence. It asks, how will we respond when the world provokes us? With anger that fuels the fire, or with peace that disarms it? Violence and injustice are real in our lives and in our world. They wound communities, divide families, and scar hearts. But every act of patience, every choice to forgive, every refusal to let hate define us, these are victories no one can take away.